Want to know the latest and hottest music hitting the airwaves? Don't be left out. Listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Music Podcast. Keith keeps you on the loop with everything you need to know from pop, rock, hip-hop, and the top 40. And we'll throw in news of your favorite artists, concert and tour dates, and so much more. Listen no further, because this is the gold standard in music podcast.
Hello and welcome to the GSMC Music Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Cynthia.
And I am your other host, Keith.
All right, Keith. So this past week, have you been listening to any good music, good vibey music, anything of that?
I like how you specifically said a keyword that is in your notes. Yes, I listened to some music, not only because I was forced to, because I said that we should both commit to listening to something that we suggested to each other, but also because I just generally do like music.
So do I. I have a playlist for like every mood in my life. We talked in the last episode about a shower playlist, which I hope you get a Bluetooth speaker.
So I can eventually partake in shower playlisting. Yes.
I have a shower playlist. I have a getting ready playlist, or while I'll do my makeup. I have a gym playlist.
I have a bubble bath playlist.
Ooh, see, that could be like vibey music. And I keep saying vibey, you know, it's just feel good music. That's
it's just the song Pop by NSYNC on repeat for about 3 hours.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
You can listen to the same song for 3 hours? Oh my.
No, well, I mean, if it's
if
it's NSYNC, I could probably do it. I don't actually have that playlist, but I might now.
You should. I'm the type of person, I can't listen to a full like 3-4 minute song, which is really annoying for others. I listen to about a minute and then I have to like skip it.
Ugh.
I know.
I can't do that.
I know.
I absolutely can't do that. I have to hear the whole song all the way through. Mostly because the first time that I hear a song, I just assume that I'm not going to like it because I've spent the first like minute criticizing it, and then I'm hopeful that it will find a way to redeem itself by the end of the song. So I have to listen to it all the way through to be sure that my assumption about whether I like it or not is good.
Well, yeah, I'm kind of like that too. Sometimes when I listen to new music, I have to listen to it repeatedly to make sure if I actually like it. But in this album I'm about to start talking about right now, Tory Lanez's new album, Chicks Tape 5, this is one of the very few albums I listened to the first time through, and I immediately knew that I liked it. And the reason why I liked it so much, I gave this whole album a theme called Blast from the Past, because Tory Lanez, he brought on like all the old R&B legends onto this album. The features on this project are amazing. He brought in, if you guys are not into R&B, I'll list a few of the features he had on the album. Ashanti. He also had, what's his face? Snoop Dogg, Jagged Edge, Trey Songz, T-Pain, and so many more. And the reason why this album was so special to me was because Tory Lanez took us through a very nostalgic musical journey. Every single song on the project, he sampled it from an early 2000s era classic hit. So
early 2000s is classic now?
It is now. I mean, we're about to get into 2020. That's insane. Just saying that out loud seems not even real, 2020. But yeah, I guess a throwback now is early 2000s.
Yeah.
I know, it's kind of crazy. But this Chicks Tape 5, it's a series. So he released the very first Chicks Tape back in 2011, and each one he has featured his favorite hits from the 2000s. So the Chicks Tapes, they're all remixes or classic songs that he sampled into and gave them like a new sound, I guess. And this album was just released this past Friday, November 15th. And I want to hear your thoughts, Keith. Is this kind of your realm of music, this type of like R&B early 2000s era?
No, I'm not a big hip hop or rap person usually, or R&B. And in fact, I've been pretty, I guess, absent from listening to that genre for the last, I'd say, almost like 3 years.
Why is that?
It's just never something that I really got into. I was much more into like alternative music. I was a huge metalhead for a short period of time. So you can be sure that we'll make Cynthia listen to a metal record at least once or twice on this podcast.
In middle school, I went through a little Hot Topic phase, and I listened to
Hot Topic phase. I love
feel
that
like
phrase.
a lot of girls went through like a mini Hot Topic phase where you wear like band T-shirts. I listened a lot back then to Paramore. That's alternative, right?
Yeah, it's alternative. It's not metal, but it's alternative.
Right. So I mean, I'm a little familiar with that territory.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
But anyways, and that's why today's show is going to be really interesting, because the music, even though it's hip hop, the albums that Keith introduced to me, I've never listened to that particular type of hip hop music, which we'll get into later. But moving on.
Yeah. Can I first ask? So it's Tory Lanez, not like Tory Lanez. I thought it was Lanez.
That's like, I feel like that's how you pronounce it in Spanish, like Lanez, but it's Lanez, Tory Lanez. I believe that's his stage name. I don't think that's his actual birth name, Tory Lanez. And throughout the album as well, there's a skit that plays throughout the entire album of this girl named Jaleesa, and she was actually featured in the previous Chicks tapes. So the skit follows, I think it was Chicks Tape 2, the very second one of the series. He's been using the same girl for the entire skit.
Oh, okay.
Yes, and he explained why. He says that sometimes, this is in an interview with Billboard, so he stated that sometimes music can be overwhelming for him just due to all the pressures of, being at the very top of your game. So he says doing skits is a cinematic relief for him.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and I kind of liked that element too. It reminded me a little bit of several of Eminem's first few records.
Yeah.
All had skits all the way through them. They were much more crass and lewd than the ones that Tory Lanez did. Right. But they also kind of helped to kind of tell a story. I didn't really quite catch on to the story in this record. I enjoyed it for what it is, I would say, but I didn't necessarily find it to be like super memorable. Like, I don't know if I'm going to, and this is just my opinion, I don't know if I'm going to go back to it necessarily to listen to it again.
Back to listen to the album or back to the skit?
The album as a whole. So, what I'm saying is in reference to the skits, like I didn't really feel a necessarily like continuous plot line through the entire thing. It did kind of serve as like stage setting at times, which I did like. And a lot of the beats and like you mentioned, the vibe of the record are all very cohesive. So I did appreciate that. I also liked the song titles. I thought those were pretty funny. I loved Jerry Sprunger. I thought that was a hilarious song title.
That's one of my favorite songs on the album, and one of the more popular ones too right now. But yeah, Jerry Sprunger. I thought that was a very clever way of naming the song. Good play on words. And you should know that, Keith, because you name our episodes, so you're pretty good at that as well. And speaking still on the interview that Tory Lanez did with Billboard, he also explained to them why he chose Ashanti, which I love Ashanti. He chose Ashanti for the album cover because he believes that she is or was a very prominent figure in the music industry for the culture in the early 2000s. She was all over back then when MTV was poppin'.
Is MTV not cool anymore?
Well, I really liked it in the past because they would play all the music videos. So that's really how I got into R&B when I was in about 5th, 6th grade, watching all these R&B hip hop music videos on MTV. I think that's a very memorable childhood moment for me and for many of my friends as well, because we all like the similar music, we all have similar music tastes. But as I was saying, Tory Lanez chose Ashanti because she represents the early 2000s era, and he quotes that she is a certified legend from the culture. Which
certified.
She is.
Who certified her?
Tory Lanez did.
Okay. Does he have the licensing to certify?
I don't know.
Is he like a licensed notary? A licensed notary who can?
I don't think so, but I mean, he's been in the music game for many, many years, so I'll take his word for it.
Yeah, I will too.
And on this note, we're going to take a really quick break, and when we come back, we're going to discuss a few of my favorite top songs in Tory Lanez album Chicks Tape. We'll be right back.
Always on the go, but the day just won't be one without your Hollywood fix. Let Golden State Media Concepts Entertainment Podcast take care of that. An all-inclusive look of pop culture.
Welcome back to the GSMC Music Podcast. As we were leaving on the break, Cynthia was getting ready to tell us about her favorite tracks off of the new Tory Lanez album, Chicks Tape 5. Mm-hmm. So what were your favorite tracks, aside from Jerry Sprunger, which is probably one of the best titled tracks on the whole record?
Absolutely. And that was actually the very first record that Tory Lanez recorded for the project. And because of that feature with T-Pain, that helped Tory Lanez get the rest of his features for the album. So
it gave him cred, as it were.
Exactly.
Yes.
Well, I mean, especially like for not just R&B, any like older musicians, OG legends, it's kind of intimidating, I would assume, as a newer artist to ask someone who's been in the game for many years, like, hey, can you hop on my track and, to make it sound better? Because that's essentially what he did. He went to Snoop Dogg, Pretty Ricky, Slime, like all of those artists are from the past, which they're still relevant today, but it is hard to sample songs that were hits back then, and then you pretty much have to make it better now.
Yeah.
So I feel like that's the most challenging part, and that's good that Jerry Sprunger was the one that kind of helped him kick the whole project off. So my second favorite song from the album was The Take featuring Chris Brown, which sampled Chris Brown's Take You Down, that's a lovemaking classic. That really is. In a video.
The Marvin Gaye of the 2000s, as it were.
Yeah, it is. It is. And the reason also why that song was really hard to sample is because Take You Down is highly successful, and Chris Brown did a really sexy, like, grinding. It was at one of his concerts. There's a video of Chris Brown singing Take You Down in his concert, and he starts, he's a dancer. He started doing all these like crazy moves, and the girls are like screaming in the stands. Mm-hmm. And so I think
the boys could scream too if they wanted to.
Yeah, they can. They can.
Yeah. Which, quick question. So Chris Brown is okay again?
I mean, what do you mean by okay?
Like we all know what happened with Chris Brown and Rihanna several years ago. So Chris Brown is okay. I don't want to say forgiven him necessarily, because that's not really on us at all as a listening audience, but like we feel okay with listening to Chris Brown again?
I feel like people have been okay with listening to him for a while. Mm-hmm. Rihanna, actually, a while back, she already forgave him. I read an article through Twitter that Rihanna's already past that. She wants to put that whole situation behind. So I'm assuming, I don't feel like he'll ever be, he's labeled as like the bad boy, right? Like that's kind of his whole image. And I feel like that's why so many women and maybe men gravitate towards him, because it's like he's such a bad boy, but like he's such a good artist at the same time. Some people, not me, have compared him to Michael Jackson.
Yeah, that's a pretty it's a pretty high praise
it
for.
Is. I think it's just due to his dance moves. And
sure, yeah.
I've seen him live in concert. I did see Chris Brown like 5-6 years ago, and I will honestly say he can put on a show. He is meant to be on stage. That is 100% true. So, third song, my favorite of the album, Still Waiting, featuring Trey Songz, which sampled Trey Songz' 2007 hit Can't Help But Wait, which is another classic. And by the way, Keith and listeners, Trey Songz, I've been obsessed with them since I think literally like 8th grade. So,
and I've never heard a single one of their songs.
Really? Trey Songz was the very first singer artist ever in my life. He was the very first concert I went to.
That's so sweet.
I know.
I think. I haven't listened to any of his songs, so I have no idea like the context of that.
He's mainly R&B.
Okay.
But lately he put out a mixtape last year.
A quick question. What is a mixtape? I don't understand this because in like your standard traditional music landscape, you have EP, LP, and singles. And B-sides. Mm-hmm. So what is a mixtape? Is it like an EP where it's like 5 to 6 tracks that lasts about 20 to 30 minutes?
I feel what an EP and mixtape is just shorter, right? An album is more of a project, cohesive project, whereas a mixtape is not.
Okay.
I honestly, that still kind of confuses me too.
I think that's part of the point.
Mm-hmm, right?
Is that we feel like we're all missing out on something because all of these people are like, oh yeah, I made a mixtape. And everyone's like, what's a mixtape?
Right.
Yeah, it's part of the cool allure of it.
When I think of mixtapes, I think of guys giving out their CDs and tapes out on Venice Beach. Have you ever been to Venice Beach?
No, I have not.
Well, comment below or comment in the comment section if you have, because in Venice Beach, LA, there's always these guys who are like giving out their mixtapes and CDs to listen to. So when I think of mixtape, for some reason, that's exactly what I picture.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, but that's just me. And moving on to the next song, Thoughts is another favorite of mine.
And that's thoughts spelled correctly, not like a thought. It's THOUGHTS. Just so the listeners are aware. Yeah.
Clarify.
Well, because we'll talk about a track later on one of the records that I sent you.
Yes.
Jesus Forgive Me, I'm a Thought, and it's spelled differently. So
yeah, so this is Thoughts featuring Lloyd and Lil Wayne, and this sampled their song You, and this is probably top 2. There's about 18 tracks in the project. This is probably my top 2 favorite on the project because it gives a whole different vibe and flow to the original song You. So in Thoughts, it's more of a Caribbean Afrobeat style. So it makes you want to like dance, slow wind. I have an Island Vibes music playlist as well. And this song already went there. But I'm a big fan of like Afro-Caribbean music. So I really appreciated this track. And also it dives into a little bit into Tory Lanez roots. So he's Canadian, but I know he has his roots go back
Canadian like Drake?
Yeah.
Okay,
I think they're from the same area.
Yeah,
in Canada. But I know that I read that one of his parents is Caribbean, but I'm not exactly sure from where.
Okay.
And the final song, Room 12, featuring Slim and Nice, which sampled You Already Know by 112. And this was the last song that was recorded on the album. And again, I love the sound. I love the beat of the entire song. So those are my top 5. Room 112, Thoughts, Still Waiting, The Take, and Jerry Sprunger. How about you, Keith?
I didn't really necessarily write down any of my favorite tracks. I definitely, like I've said, I enjoyed Jerry Sprunger, and I really liked the kind of like pause and refresh that you get with Thoughts. The track just kind of stands out amongst the other tracks because of the subtle music differences just in the structure and the actual beat of the song. So it was kind of a nice, refreshing way to go from like this top 40 Billboard hit sample feel to this kind of like more relaxed, more, as you would say, vibey track. I used your word.
But no, I absolutely agree with you. So I think we can both kind of say that Jerry Sprunger and Thoughts, right? Because that's the one
highly recommend those 2 songs.
Yeah.
Out of 10, what would you give the record?
Overall, I would say a 9 out of 10. The only reason why I give it a 9 and not a 10 is because every song is a sample. So it's not an original, right? So I can't give it a full 10 when it was already a classic hit back then. But now Tory Lanez just made it even better and gave it a new sound. So big shout out, honestly, to Tory Lanez. That's really hard to do, to sample songs and just top it from what it was previously. And thank you, Tory Lanez, for reminding us of simpler times when white Air Forces, I mean, they're still in, but back then they were really in, and the big, spray tee. So it was very nostalgic for me.
Spray tee?
This, the big, like white tees where they spray paint on them.
Oh, okay, yeah. We're talking about streetwear.
Streetwear, yeah.
Streetwear.
Right. He's putting quotes on that, streetwear.
Yes.
But anyway,
for this incredibly visual medium of podcasting.
Exactly. Imagery here, people.
Yeah.
But yeah, so all in all, if you love R&B, I highly recommend this album, especially if you're a fan of the early 2000s.
Yeah, and I would like to say, I think that, like, if I were to give this a rating, I'd probably give it like a 6 or maybe even a 5.5. But
you're hard critic.
I don't give anything a 10, honestly. In the entirety of this podcast, if I ever give out a 10, then you should be really surprised. But I do want to say that the fact that he's able to take all of these samples from these songs that a lot of people are very familiar with and give them a new kind of fresh look really is a testament to the quality of, I would say, musician or composer that Tory Lanez is, or that his team is, depending on if he worked with a team or by himself. So I think that in itself is reason enough to give the record a shot. So I would definitely also recommend listening to this.
So Keith and I both agree. Yay. And on that note, we're going to take our second quick break. And when we come back, we're going to move to a different topic. Ari Lennox getting snubbed at the Soul Train Music Awards. We'll be right back.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
Alrighty, welcome back for the second time to the GSMC Music Podcast. We are about to talk about something else that I have no knowledge of prior to doing this show, the Soul Train Music Awards.
Yes, so, I'll give you guys a little bit of knowledge then. So, the Soul Train Music Awards, it's pretty much an award show ceremony that takes place annually. And it just happened this Sunday, November 17th, and it pretty much just recognizes and honors the entertainers who represent R&B, soul music, and a little bit of hip-hop actually, but more geared towards R&B and soul music, which I'm sure you guys have picked up on it already. I am a huge fan of that genre. And something specific that I want to talk about regarding the Soul Train Music Awards is about Ari Lennox. She's a soul singer, and how she feels that she got snubbed at the Soul Train Music Awards.
I mean, with my minimal knowledge, I would have to completely agree that she was snubbed.
Mm-hmm. So Ari Lennox, she released her album, Shea Butter Baby. Just that name alone.
So good.
Right. Yeah. Just the name, like Shea Butter Baby, that just reminds me of like cocoa butter.
Yeah.
I don't right.
And it's got that nice consonant feel to it, Shea Butter Baby. Like it feels soulful and
just rolls off the tongue.
Yeah, exactly.
And so Ari Lennox released this project in May of 2019, and she classifies this album as a neo soul album, a feel-good album, which it absolutely is. A couple of my favorite tracks on the album are Whipped Cream and BMO, which BMO, it stands for Break Me Off. So.
Oh, okay.
Right. Break Me Off and Whipped Cream. Those are one of my favorite tracks. And even Whipped Cream, like a song called Whipped Cream.
Whipped Cream.
Whipped Cream, exactly. So Ari Lennox was nominated for 3 awards, but she took home none. So this is really surprising to me because Ari Lennox classifies herself as a soul singer. And everything about her screams soul and soul music. So she she lost the, what was the award? She lost the Album of the Year award. She lost it to Lizzo. And to me, Lizzo is more pop. So you can kind of see Ari's frustrations here, right? She gave it her, and she worked on this album for about like 3 or 4 years. That's the crazy thing too.
You can tell in the album. I listened to a few tracks before we started the podcast just so that I could try to familiarize myself, and I was immediately impressed. Like, I'm going to go back and listen to the whole record. I could skip through that Lizzo record and listen to 5 seconds of each song and know exactly what I'm going to get the whole time. And it's definitely like maybe 2 tracks. I think Jerome was a track on there, or Jeremy. I can't remember what it was. And that one had a little bit of soul to it because you got to hear a little bit of Lizzo's vocals, which are good, right? It's not that Lizzo's bad or anything. It's just that if you're looking to define what soul music ought to look like in the future of that particular genre, I would say that Ari Lennox really nails it, and Lizzo she's doing her own thing,
right.
Which is good, but it's just not. I wouldn't have given Lizzo Album of the Year at a soul music award.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I just feel like they're both in 2 separate categories. So it doesn't even make sense to me how they can both be under the same category at a soul award show for Album of the Year.
Yeah, it's like Lizzo got the award for being the best apple, but she's an orange.
That's wow, that's really good. Perfect analogy right there. And Ari Lennox, she took to Twitter on Tuesday night explaining to her fans her disappointment with the music industry and just her overall frustrations. She made it very clear in her tweets that she doesn't want to sound entitled. It's not entitlement here. It's just that she can't wrap her mind around how she is a soul singer and she didn't win any award for a soul album.
Do we know how popular Ari Lennox is? Well, do you know how popular she is? I have no idea, but
I feel like after her album Shea Butter Baby, she gained a lot of popularity because, as you said, it's really good. If you haven't listened to it, again, I highly, highly recommend. Feel good music right there. And she's not, I wouldn't say she's one of like the trendiest people. Like, she's not a Kardashian, right? But they're in 2 separate lanes. I am a fan of Ari. They're both doing their own thing, but Ari Lennox is just not in the media in that way. She's strictly just my music, here it is, and that's that. I don't get involved with any of the drama. I don't care to be a fashionista. So I think because of that she's not considered a trendy girl. Yeah, she could have
well, I was going to say, I think that half the reason they would even give an award to an artist who might not like fully qualify for it would be as a media ploy, because you're going to garner a lot more attention from giving the award to Lizzo, because Lizzo is very popular right now, and rightfully so. She makes good music, and she targets a demographic and represents a demographic that has had minimal representation prior to this. And so when they give her that award, like, it says something about not only those awards, but the industry, and it's going to garner more popularity, because it is like, even the snub of Ari Lennox garners popularity for the award show in itself, which is like, I've never even heard of it. So obviously it's not like a household name for everybody. So if they can give the award to someone who is more of a household name, they're going to garner more attention for themselves. And I think, if anything, not to speak for Ari Lennox or to assume that I know anything about what it's like to be in the music industry, but if I'm her, I'm partially upset about the fact that I probably know that, like, I doubt that Ari Lennox is ignorant to the fact that half of Lizzo getting the award is like a publicity.
Oh, absolutely.
Thing.
It's my personal opinion, I think award shows are very rigged. I know I'm not even really sure how they calculate the votes or how they really handle the votes or anything of that sort. I know some award shows you can vote, the people can vote, but even then I'm like, it has to be a little rigged, because some of these categories, I'm like, these artists should not even be in the same group. Or this artist, like how you said, Lizzo, she's not really soul. So how is she nominated for awards at a Soul Train Music Awards? So it just doesn't really make sense to me, like who categorizes. I think how you said, it's almost like a popularity contest at this point.
Yeah.
But again, not knocking Lizzo down. I do like Lizzo. Am I a huge fan of her music? No. I only know one, Truth Hurts. It plays on the radio like 100 times within an hour, but that's okay. So yeah, overall, Ari Lennox, she stated that she wants to quit music after this loss, saying that she's been grinding since 2009 and she just doesn't feel valued in the music industry. And I hope she doesn't quit, because she makes really good music.
Yeah, I really, from the couple tracks that I listened to, I really felt like she absolutely does represent what neo soul is going to have to look like in the future if it wants to stay alive as a genre that's in the main view of listeners.
Mm-hmm, absolutely. And right there, folks, we just dived into the Soul Train Music Awards, more R&B. And when we come back after the break, Keith is going to talk about the two albums, which is from There Existed an Addiction for Blood and All My Heroes Are Cornballs. So this should be interesting. We'll be right back.
Watching TV has changed over time. Streaming has become the new norm. That's why Golden State Media Concepts television podcast dives headfirst to the world of cord cutting. Want to be on the loop of what's hot in Netflix? Or if it's not a preference, what about original shows in Hulu? We've got you covered. Join us as we fill in the blank and talk about movies to stream and what show you should be binging. This is the Golden State Media Concepts television podcast.
All right, that is the last commercial break for today, I promise. Welcome back to the GSMC Music Podcast with Keith and Cynthia. And it is my turn to talk about something that Cynthia doesn't have a ton of prior knowledge about, which I'm honestly a little surprised, but not super surprised that you haven't heard of, have you heard of either of these artists prior to us?
I have not. You put me on. Do you know what it means for you to put me on?
No, I don't.
That means like you introduced me to it. Like because of you, I know these artists. Because prior to Keith sending me these albums and these artists, I have never heard of this type of hip hop. But I like learning, so I don't mind. I'm
super surprised that you hadn't heard of at least like JPEG Mafia. I was told by the person who recommended me to listen to the record that he was popular. So I guess it's not like any of the songs on this record are really radio friendly necessarily. Mm-hmm. So I can understand like why you would have never heard of him, but I am a little surprised.
JPEG Mafia, he must be a little popular because I did see that he's on the lineup for this year's Snow Globe Music Festival in Lake Tahoe. Cool. Yeah, so people must listen to him. Right.
Yeah. But the first record that we're going to talk about is a record from an artist called Clipping. And it's their most recent record, There Existed an Addiction for Blood.
Just that name alone scared me a little bit. I was like, when Keith first sent me this album, I thought it was a typo. I'm like, am I reading this right?
I mean, technically I did send you a typo because I didn't have the title of the record correct when I first suggested it.
It said Blood. I was like,
yeah.
I'm intrigued.
It's a little intense, yeah. Clipping is an artist. They're a rap artist. Or hip hop, experimental hip hop. I think they're being called like horror rap now is kind of the genre that they're falling into.
That's the vibe I got. Definitely horror. I was a little scared listening.
Yeah, so you put on here that based on a 70s vampire film. So that's interesting. What did you find out about that?
I can't remember the article I was reading, but this project, there existed an addiction for blood by clipping. Even just the name speaks a little bit of vampire to me.
Yeah.
But to be honest, I can't think of the details right now, but I did remember reading that it's based on a 70s vampire film that Clippings is a fan of.
Yeah.
I can't think of the exact film on the top of my head right now, but it makes sense, again, with the title of the album.
Yeah, and the feel of the album is very horror movie as well. It's got a lot of dissonance, a lot of really interesting like phrasing as far as the verses are concerned, and the way that the lead, I think it's two rappers, I'm not totally sure. I know that in their 2016, I want to say, record Splendor and Misery, they had the guy who one of the guys rapping on that record was the person who rapped for the musical Hamilton.
Oh, really?
So he's a very talented individual, and I think he was on this one too. I think that he's one of the two primary members. Clipping is like the pretense of their music is that they get all of the noises and sounds and beats and everything from found sound. So if you hear like a glass breaking, that's a glass they actually broke in real life.
Wow. Is that what it's called, found sound?
Yeah. So if you listened to like a record people might be more familiar with that has a similar principle, which Kanye West absolutely stole from Clipping. Well, maybe not stole so much as borrowed. But Yeezus, which is Kanye's best record, but we can talk about that another week. There's a specific song on there called I'm in It, where he uses a dog bark for the snare drum, and that's like an actual recording of a dog barking that Kanye took himself. And that's kind of the idea behind what Clipping does, is like all of their beats, it's all constructed from things that they've done in the real world to record that sound. So it's pretty interesting.
I think I picked up on that. I can't remember the name of one of the songs on the album, but I was listening to the album off of my laptop, and I started hearing like static sound, like radio static, and I thought it was my laptop or the sound off iTunes getting mixed up, but I realized soon that it was actually in the song. And I think because of that, I couldn't get through the entire album because the noise and like the sound in the songs were just so intense for me.
Yeah, it is a very intense record. And that's something that Clipping does a lot of.
It was just very intense. So because of this, it wasn't even him rapping. They can rap. It's a group, right?
I think it's two guys. I'm not totally sure.
They definitely have bars. When that I can't deny. Is this my style of hip hop? No. But I could definitely appreciate their flow. They definitely, again, like I said, they have bars. But just the sound alone kind of threw me off, because I'm like, I can't even like focus on the lyrics because I'm so focused on, I guess, the background noise. What was it? What was the word?
The found sound. Yeah,
the found sound. Right.
All of the songs feel a little bit like frenetic, kind of like, just really. They make you feel anxious, and I think that's like that's part of the point, because it is based off of like an old horror movie. So, and they're trying to enter into like maybe a different kind of genre or make a different kind of statement. Most of the records that Clipping does are concept records. So, like their first record was about this story of a slave in space who like escaped and then falls in love with the computer on the ship. So it's like this big long story, and a lot of their work has been similar things. So they definitely try to keep on like a theme or a similar feel for most of their record. And this one definitely kind of captures that like horror movie feel in a unique and interesting way that kind of hasn't been done in this space before.
Right. And so what would you recommend, Keith, or how would you recommend listening to this album? Like in what type of setting would you say to our listeners, like you should play this album? Is it like when you're working out? Would you suggest listening? Because that's a type of, hard. It was hardcore for me. I said it was a little too hardcore. I wouldn't be able to listen to this album like twice. Even I couldn't even listen to it once all the way through. So what would you recommend to our listeners? What's a good setting to listen to this album?
I would say that this is kind of an album that you have to sit and chew on. It's kind of like, I'm trying to think of a food that's like a really acquired taste, but once you've acquired it, you really enjoy it. I guess I could say just basically it's kind of like stinky cheese. Like if you're just listening to it passively, like if you walk into a room and you smell stinky cheese, you're like, oh, that smells gross. I'm not going to partake in that particular thing. And I think this record is the same way. So like if you're trying to do chores in the kitchen or something and you're just going to listen to this in the background, I think you're going to have a bit of a harder time getting into it. Mm-hmm. But if you can like sit down and really just kind of sit in the record and in the songs, I think that there is a lot of good melodic movement that kind of juxtaposes the anxiousness and the anxiety that is incurred by listening to a record that is this hardcore, as you will. So I would definitely say give it a shot. I think very highly of Clipping. Unfortunately, a lot of other people did not agree with me on this particular record.
Me.
Well, not just that, but Pitchfork. So Pitchfork is kind of like the place to go for weird music, right? Pitchfork did not like this record. They hated it. They gave it like a 4 out of 10.
I read on that actually on Pitchfork. I did.
And they sent, the guy who wrote the article had several digs about how it feels listless and it's just not a good record. I really feel like the unfortunate product of success is that people expect you to be able to capture it again or to do something very similar. And Clipping is really well known amongst critics for their Splendor and Misery record, the one that I was talking about earlier, which is absolutely incredible. And I won't disagree that I think it is probably like, as of now, their magnum opus, if you will. But I think that people get kind of stuck in thinking that, oh, what this band is going to come out with or what this group is going to come out with next is going to be similar to that. And if it's not, then it's not as good. I think that this record is good on its own, but I wouldn't necessarily put it in the same rank as I would Splendor and Misery. But you should definitely give it a listen.
Definitely not the type of hip hop you listen or the typical hip hop sound you hear in like club. It's not club music.
No, you're not going to be able to dance to it.
Right. It's not Drake. It's not Migos. So definitely a different style of hip hop that, thanks to Keith, introduced to me. Again, would I listen to the album again? No, but give it a shot. We're going to leave it at that. And we're going to talk about the second album now that Keith picked out for me to listen to. So Keith, introduce the topic.
Yeah, so we listened to JPEG Mafia, All My Heroes Are Cornballs. And I actually hadn't listened to this before suggesting it to you. It's been on my to listen to list for a while. So I just figured this was a great excuse. The record is recorded entirely in a home studio, which I think is pretty awesome. The mixing and the mastering were all done by Barrington Hendricks, I think is his last name, and he is JPEG Mafia. So JPEG Mafia is just one person, kind of like Bon Iver is.
So
well,
is that
mainly
his
Justin Vernon.
birth name, Barrington Hendricks?
Yes, yeah, Barrington, weird name, huh?
It is.
Yeah.
That sounds like a city. Like I'm thinking, oh, I'm from Barrington, California.
Yeah. Oh, I
not
don't know.
A place. But.
I was going to say like Barrington, Georgia. It sounds like something southern, maybe.
Right. Yeah, definitely not a Cali city.
Yeah. As far as like critical reception, as of right now, critics really love this record. I really liked it as well. We talked earlier in the episode about the importance of titling your tracks in a memorable way. And I mentioned that like the opening track on this record is called Jesus Forgive Me, I'm a Thought, which is just hilarious.
That's something I noticed with this whole project. The names really captured my attention. Even just the title of the album, All My Heroes Are Cornballs.
That was hilarious.
Yeah. So very clever. Every single song on the track is pretty memorable just because of the name. There's another one too.
My Slimy Waifu? Because I love that one.
There was one, Papi, I Missed You.
Yeah, Papi, I Missed You. I loved that track. That was
Papi,
that was really good.
And then there was also another, there was BBW. And then the one that it has a cuss word in it. So it's B something tear gas.
Oh, Basic Girl Tear Gas.
Yeah. Basic Girl Tear Gas. So
is that the one where he samples I don't know what the song is, but it's the one that I Don't Want No Scrub, and he like does it real slow and creepy.
Yeah. So that one I will definitely say probably my favorite song just because he did sample No Scrubs. And so JPEG Mafia's album compared to the one we were just previously talking about, Clipping, I definitely liked JPEG Mafia a lot more.
Yeah.
And I think it's just easier to listen to. Just the sound itself was easier on the ear.
Yeah, it's not as experimental.
Mm-hmm. I would go back and listen to a few of the songs again. I didn't. Again, it's not. You're expanding my horizons here in the hip hop world. Would I listen to the album again? Yeah, just to make sure. Like, do I really like this song? This is an album I have to kind of listen to over and over again to decipher which songs I'm going to add to my playlist.
Yeah, and some of these songs are actually pretty radio friendly. Like the last track on the record is like borders on dancey. Like I could see people dancing to it, which I think is really cool because a lot of what JPEG Mafia does is he kind of considers it to be punk rap, where he wants to make a punk rock song without guitars. I think is one of the statements that he's made about the songs on the record, and I think he does a pretty good job of accomplishing that. He meets all of the minimal requirements. He definitely makes some political statements, and definitely has a couple references to his time in the military, and it really effectively captures like tropes that you would hear in like pop punk or punk songs and transfers them over to this genre that he's really good at. I really enjoyed the record.
Yeah, I actually read that it might have been actually on Pitchfork that JPEG Mafia wrote or started writing songs while he was deployed in Japan, while he was in the military. So I thought that was pretty interesting because how you said he does make some references in his music about his time spent in the military. Again, what would you rate this project out of a 10?
I would give this record like a 7.5 or an 8, which is pretty
that's
high
right.
marks for me. Normally, most of the things I rate are going to sit in between like 5 and 7. So I would definitely say this is above average, and I highly recommend it. I really enjoyed it. And I think that it is a really good take on like classic tropes with a new twist.
Mm-hmm. I agree. No, I didn't absolutely hate it. I would rate it a 5 in my book.
Just a 5?
A 5, right. And it's just because I'm not familiar with this style of hip hop. So I think I just need to get a little more accustomed to this flow. And maybe I'll get it up to a 7 next time. Who knows? But ladies and gentlemen, that's going to wrap up today's episode. We discussed Tory Lanez R&B drama in the soul drama in the Soul Train Music Awards, and a little bit of hip hop album reviews. Please give us 5 stars.
Like and subscribe.
All of that good stuff. We love the nice comments. And you will catch Keith and I at next week's episode at GSMC Music Podcast.
Thanks for listening.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Music Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.